All right, David, it's that time of the week. You know what to do. Let's talk about narrative. I love the way you talk about narrative. I ask you about TA, I ask you about tokens, and you're like, well, the narrative on this one's very interesting. And you mentioned something very interesting about INJ that hit the all-time high at the exact dollar figure that Kyle said it was going to. And then what happened after that?
Well, it's just been pretty much going sideways ever since. It's kind
Yeah.
of yeah, stuck up at there at that 40 level. But yeah, what a remarkable thing. There's been a couple coins that have had that amazing narrative and that have already made like all-time highs. So obviously these are things that participated in the last bull run and now they've already surpassed what they did, uh, which is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So now that we got the all-time high, the question is, what's the next part of the narrative?
So the
What are the
next part of
options?
the next part of the narrative for me is, is Bitcoin going to actually break through the resistance that we've established here up in this 44, 45 area and actually push to the highs of the 40s before taking a break, or are we going to roll over now and take a little bit of a snooze? We've got a Santa rally. The U.S. markets are looking very strong and had a day off yesterday, but are back to being positive today. So, yeah, that to me is the big narrative. Is it Bitcoin going to continue to give us another leg up, or do we roll over from here?
Right. And so what else are you looking at, man?
So, so because Seoul at this time last year was bombing, it was completely washing out for us. Now this year on the winter solstice, SOL Seoul is actually pumping and pushing that $100 psychological level. So that's kind of the story. And then of course we know that Seoul has a phone that they're distributing with BONK on it. So BONK
Yeah.
is
Well, hold
of
on.
that chain.
Before we
So.
go there, I want to talk about the winter solstice for a second because a lot of people might be listening and they'll go, "Why does that even matter?" So
Mhm.
talk to me about how this affects the markets.
Okay, so I'm of the mind that I'm nor a bull or a bear. I'm a wolf and I'm howling at the moon. I'm looking at these cycles. I'm looking at solar cycles. I'm looking at lunar cycles, and I'm looking at how they can interface with potential entry options. So I always want to time things when the energy is right. So some people won't use the word energy. They're talking more sentiment. If you want to keep it more TA, we'll talk sentiment and TA. But within that sentiment, for me, there are signs and there are cycles. For example, like Luna, when it crashed on a lunar eclipse between two lunar eclipses, it went from 100 and something down to zero. I have all on my charts. I have all of the eclipses actually.
Actually, can you share your
um,
screen and show that real quick, man?
Yes, I
Let
can
me
do that. I sure can.
you got
If you will,
screen you got screen sharing options. I just gave it to you.
if
Go
you will
ahead.
give me permission, yeah. All
Yes.
right,
You shall not pass.
yeah. Can you see it now?
Yes, yeah.
There,
So
there it is.
where do you put the winners, the eclipses and the winter solstices and all that stuff?
Okay, so I have to go to my special chart over here. We'll take a look at it, and I keep track of all these things, and it's been eye-opening. So you can see these vertical lines I have on my chart here. I'm going to put this on a weekly so we can hopefully get a better look at it. So, for example, yeah, these red lines uh, are um, are going to be our major eclipses and stuff like that. Actually, I might just switch it to a daily. And you can see we had several major things play out. So you can see I have here, we had a solar and a lunar eclipse, and then we had the FTX ritual. I want you to take a look at the price action right at the end of this second, right where this lunar eclipse was. This was the FTX ritual. Now, I wasn't calling it that at the time, but looking back now, you can see eclipse ritual, Luna eclipse. So this was the lunar, these were the two eclipses that bookended the beginning of Luna's collapse, which was, I think that was back in May of 22. And then I've went back and I actually looked at all of the eclipses in the last few years, and I noticed there were big moves, usually down coming from all of them. So this is how I started to notice this. Here was the FTX ritual. Now, it's not always what you think it's going to be, but as long as you're looking for something, now I'll show you what that means. There was a solar eclipse most recently on October 14th, I think it was. I was actually looking for a down move because that's what all the past eclipses have given us. But look what happened since that eclipse. You can see it right here. Bitcoin has been on a tear ever since the eclipse. So these energy changes in the system can have a massive impact on what the markets are going to do.
All right.
So
So
I'll be
you
watching those benchmarks.
and so you mentioned specifically for Sol, we're heading into a winter solstice and
Yeah.
Sol. So let's look at Sol and talk about how that affects the situation for a second.
Okay, so yeah, so I've been talking about this for a little bit now. If we look at November 7th of last year, going into, this solstice, which was right around this candle down here between these two candles. So the or 3 or 4 weeks prior to the solstice, Sol was dumping hard. And now you can see as we move into this year's solstice, we're pumping into this solstice. So you can see that, yeah, like the flip-flop going on as above, so below, they say. So one year it's doing this year it's doing this. And right on time, right? So today is actually the 21st. So I think it is the first or the last day of fall today.
Okay.
So
All right.
little things that I watch to give me clues.
All right. So now let's talk about BONK real quick. And
Mm,
because that is the Solana primary meme token. We were able to catch this last week when it started to break out, which was fun because that was a
we did.
big, tasty move. But
Uh-huh.
then let's talk about so the main. Okay, so you know what? Take it off screen share for 1 second because I want to ask
Yeah.
you about one thing here, right? And I think this is an important question that a lot of people are going to have, and I don't know the answer. A whole bunch of BONK is being shipped on Solana phones, and a lot of
Mm.
people are like, "Well, as soon as those phones get into everyone's hot little hands, it's going to dump." Right? Everyone's going to get it. They're going to sell it to recoup the investment of having bought the phone, which makes sense in theory. However, what do you think? With all of your, we're talking about solstice, we're talking about price action, we're talking about everything combined, and also human sentiment. What do you think? Do you think everyone's going to sell and it's going to dump? What would you, what, and this is not financial advice, but what's your instinct?
So I think, yeah, there'll be short-sighted people who are looking for, a quick hit. But I do think there will be like crypto fans that realize where we are in the cycle, right? So these cycles in crypto have played out over and over and over again, and not just the macro cycle, like the cycles within the cycles have played out. So we know this whole chain has a lot of potential in the coming years. So yeah, short-sighted people are going to sell, but I think there'll be plenty of people who can see that there's a lot of institutional activity around this right now. There's a lot of stacking of this, that
Yeah.
there might be like life-changing gains to be made rather than just a couple hundred or a couple $1,000 here
I
in this.
agree. And let me tell you what I think. I remember the way that I tackled this question is I thought about what would I do, right? And my first thought was, well, if I even know what the hell a Solana phone is, then I clearly understand the value of the Solana
Hmm.
chain. And I'm
Yep.
gonna look at it and go, okay, I'm gonna get my bonk. I'm gonna get that sounded sexy. I'm gonna get it on the phone.
Get your bonk on
But
there, Jim.
my first thought would be, well, if I have the foresight to get the phone in the first place, then I'm probably gonna have the foresight to keep all or the majority of it. So what I thought might be the case is that we're gonna hit key levels of all-time highs or key levels of resistance. And when we experience the pullback, we might get a slightly harder pullback because that's where a lot of people are going to take some profits, but they're not going to give it
Mm.
all up. So my first thought was the effect it may have on the moves over the next year is when we get those retraces, they might just be a little more severe because there's been a lot more given away on these phones. But it's not going to really affect the long-term trajectory of the token over the next year because people are very romantic on Solana. They're very romantic on, and they are, and dude, so am I. Our first Investor Share's first NFT was on Solana. If you want
Hmm.
to find out more about that, sign up for Investor Share. You can hear about our NFT series. But like, people, and that's why I think it's really important to talk about the concept, whether you agree with it or not. Anyone watching the winter solstice, the eclipses, you might call it a whole bunch of foofy stuff, right? But we all know The markets move based on perception of value, and the perception is based on emotion. So if you can clue in, this is why I find it really intriguing what David talks about. If you can go, historically, people feel a little bit more bummed out at this period because of the lunar eclipses, then that can affect, on a global scale, that can affect people's decision making short term. And then you can just keep it in mind. You don't have to make your decisions based off it 100%, but it's just another tool in your tool belt. And I find it fascinating because you're the first person who I ever heard mention it. I was like, you're a hippie, get away from me with that. And then when I looked into it, I was like, this makes a little bit of sense because it's all emotion based. People sell when they freak and they buy when they're hot. And if there's something in the energy of the sun, the moon, the whole thing that just tips you over the edge, you should take it into consideration. So,
Agreed, agreed.
and that being said, so long term with the TA on BONK, let's take a quick look at the TA on BONK because I had to stop myself from FOMOing in a second time when I made like 80%. I had to pull away for a day. I got real hot. I was like, careful.
Hmm. So yeah, what Shim's talking about is I actually was encouraging him to get in. Was it right around here?
Yep.
And he caught this entire move up here, which was beautiful. Well done, Shim.
Thank you for the
Uh,
signal,
and
brother.
yeah, and since then we had this, blow off top, you could call it here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of just, kind of selling off and going lower. Interesting to note, there's been like institutional activity. You can see this orange activity down here on my Lux algo. This is an old indicator. You can't get this anymore, but I've been using it and I do love it. So there's been institutional activity all the way selling up at the high, potentially building a short position, and then all the way into these lows here. So the pattern that we're seeing here is a potential descending wedge breaking out here. You are seeing a reversal pattern on just the candles alone right here. These three candles right here, you have your down move, your doji, and now your up move. That is an abandoned baby. That is a reversal pattern. And now you're seeing it start to push. So I love when I see two things. I see like not only like a candlestick pattern, but also like a daily chart pattern. So I really like this. I like that there's institutional buying all the way into these lows. If we jump in on an hourly, you can see institutional buying going on into these low areas here on the hourly chart as well. Money flow starting to trickle back up as well. We do have a bit of a selling wall here. So if you're not in this thing, this area could be troublesome to get through. So I usually like to, it's one try, two try, maybe a third try, maybe it takes four tries to back up and finally get through that potential trouble spot there. But then you can see some blue skies ahead to get back to potentially retest this prior week high.
Mm. Beautiful. All right. I think
Yeah, it is
this
beautiful.
is good. We're at about time. So go ahead and take your screen share off from me, please, David. But I love
I
looking at your charts. They're starting to make more sense to me every week.
grew
All right. So guys, I was very lucky last week, and a lot of members were with the bonk call. If you want to be able to get them ahead of time, click the link. You know what to do. Check out Investor Share. There's a whole free webinar to walk you through it. In the meantime, David, thank you for the call, and we'll see you next week.
I look forward to it, Shim. Take it easy, everybody.